HFY Morthun adjusted his observation equipment for the third time in 10 minutes. The small recording devices felt strange in his four-fingered hands, but the Keltharian High Command had been very clear about his mission. He was to observe these new creatures called humans during their war with the Vorth hegemony. The Empire wanted to know if these newcomers could be useful allies or if they posed a threat. The docking bay of the human ship called UNS Defiant was much smaller than Keltharian vessels. Everything looked cramped and inefficient. HFY's pale blue skin stood out against the gray metal walls as he waited for someone to escort him. His large black eyes took in every detail, from the strange symbols humans called letters to the rough welding marks on the bulkheads. "You must be our observer," a voice said behind him. HFY turned to see a human male approaching. The creature was shorter than most Keltharians, with brown hair and small brown eyes. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, commander of this vessel." HFY studied the human's face. Morrison had lines around his eyes and mouth that suggested either age or stress. His clothing was a simple blue uniform with metal insignia. Nothing about him suggested the sophisticated military bearings HFY expected from a starship commander. "I am HFY Morthun, xenobiologist of the Keltharian Empire," HFY replied in careful human language. "I am here to study your combat methods." Morrison smiled, showing his white teeth. HFY made a mental note about this facial expression. Keltharians did not bare their teeth unless threatening someone. "Well, you picked an interesting time to visit. We're heading to the outer rim where the Vorth have been hitting our supply lines." As they walked through the ship's corridors, HFY observed the human crew. They were loud and disorganized. Groups of humans stood around talking and laughing. Some made crude jokes that served no apparent tactical purpose. Others engaged in physical contact, like patting each other on the back or punching each other's arms in what seemed like friendly violence. "This is Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, our tactical officer," Morrison said, introducing a female human with dark hair tied back in a simple knot. "Amy, meet our Keltharian observer." Rodriguez looked HFY up and down with sharp brown eyes. "Hope you're not squeamish," she said. "The Vorth don't play nice, and neither do we when they hurt our people." HFY found the statement curious. Keltharian military doctrine emphasized precise, calculated warfare with minimal casualties. The idea of emotional responses affecting tactical decisions seemed primitive. "I am here to learn about your methods," he said carefully. "Our methods?" Rodriguez laughed. "Our methods are simple. Find the enemy, kill the enemy, protect our own. Everything else is just details." As they continued the tour, HFY met more crew members. Sergeant Rick Thompson was a large human male covered in scars. He commanded a group of soldiers called Marines who seemed to spend their time cleaning weapons and telling stories about previous battles. Thompson's eyes had a hard look that reminded HFY of predatory animals from his homeworld. "What do you think of humans so far?" Thompson asked when Morrison introduced them. "You are different from what I expected," HFY admitted. Thompson grinned. "Wait until you see us fight. That's when humans get interesting." The ship's mess hall was chaos. Hundreds of humans sat at long tables eating food and talking loudly. Some played games with small cards. Others arm wrestled or told jokes. The noise level would have driven a Keltharian crew to distraction, but the humans seemed comfortable with the constant sound. "This is how they bond," Morrison explained, noticing HFY's confusion. "Shared meals, shared stories, shared experiences. It builds unit cohesion." HFY watched a group of young humans competing to see who could eat the spiciest food. They were red-faced and sweating, but laughing as they challenged each other. "This serves a military purpose?" he asked. "Everything serves a military purpose with humans," Morrison said. "They just don't always know it themselves." That evening, HFY was given quarters near the ship's science section. The room was small but functional, with a bed, desk, and viewing port. As he organized his equipment and began his first report, he tried to make sense of what he had observed. Humans seemed to operate on emotion rather than logic. Their command structure was informal compared to Keltharian standards. They wasted time and energy on activities that had no obvious tactical value. Yet Morrison commanded obvious respect from his crew, and the ship itself was well maintained despite its crude appearance. The next morning brought HFY's first look at human military planning. Rodriguez gathered her staff around a large table, covered with holographic displays showing star charts and tactical information. The discussion was nothing like Keltharian war councils. The Vorth hit 3 supply convoys in this sector, Rodriguez said, pointing to red marks on the star chart. They're using fast attack ships to hit and run before our patrols can respond. So we change the patrol patterns, suggested a young officer. Or we bait them, Thompson said. Use a fake convoy to draw them into an ambush. Too risky, Morrison said. If something goes wrong, we lose real supplies and real people. Zexai listened as the humans debated. They interrupted each other constantly, argued about details, and seemed to ignore proper military protocol. Yet gradually a plan emerged. They would use multiple small squadrons to create overlapping patrol zones, forcing the Vorth to either avoid the area entirely or fight through superior numbers. What about civilian casualties? Rodriguez asked. That's always the priority, Morrison said firmly. We protect our people first, complete the mission second. This attitude puzzled Zexai. Keltharian military doctrine placed mission completion above all other considerations. Individual casualties were regrettable, but acceptable if they served the greater strategic purpose. Humans seemed to reverse this priority, putting individual lives ahead of tactical objectives. The meeting ended with assignments given to various officers. As the humans dispersed, Zexai approached Morrison with a question. Captain, I do not understand your tactical priorities. How can you complete missions if individual safety comes first? Morrison looked at him for a long moment. You'll understand once you see us fight, he said. Humans protect their own. That's not our weakness, it's what makes us dangerous. As Zexai returned to his quarters to compile his observations, he reflected on Morrison's words. The captain had spoken with absolute certainty, as if stating a fundamental law of nature, but Zexai could not see how prioritizing individual safety could make a military force more dangerous. If anything, it seemed like a tactical disadvantage. He would soon learn how wrong he was. 3 days into the patrol, the UNS Defiant received a distress signal that would change everything Zexai thought he knew about humans. The message came from the UNS Haven, a colony ship carrying 5,000 civilians to a new settlement. 3 Vorth destroyers had attacked without warning and were boarding the massive vessel. Battle stations, Morrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. The effect on the crew was immediate and startling. The relaxed, joking humans Zexai had observed for days transformed into something else entirely. Their movements became quick and purposeful. Their faces grew hard and focused. The constant chatter died to essential communication only. Zexai followed Morrison to the bridge, his recording equipment ready. This would be his first chance to observe human combat tactics in action. He expected to see the crude but effective warfare strategies that had made humans useful enough to contact the galactic community. Distance to target? Morrison asked as he settled into his command chair. 2 minutes at full speed, Rodriguez replied from her tactical station. Her fingers danced over controls with practiced efficiency. Haven is reporting heavy casualties. The Vorth are executing civilians. Something changed in Morrison's expression at those words. Zexai noticed it immediately. A subtle shift from professional concern to something much colder. How many Vorth ships? Morrison asked. 3 destroyers, sir. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Doesn't matter, Morrison said quietly. They hurt our people. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the soft beeping of sensors. Zexai watched the human crew work with an efficiency that seemed impossible, given their chaotic behavior during peacetime. Every person knew exactly what to do without being told. Visual contact, the navigation officer announced. The main screen showed a scene that made Zexai's stomach turn. The UNS Haven was a massive ship designed to carry families to new worlds. Scorch marks covered its hull where Vorth weapons had torn through its defenses. Small Vorth attack craft swarmed around it like insects feeding on a wounded animal. Open a channel to Haven, Morrison ordered. A human female appeared on the screen. Her uniform was torn and bloody and smoke drifted behind her. This is Commander Lisa Park of the UNS Haven. We have multiple hull breaches and enemy boarders on decks 7 through 12. They're killing civilians, Captain. Men, women, children, it doesn't matter to them. Zexai expected Morrison to ask about tactical situations or request casualty reports. Instead, the captain's next words sent a chill through the xenobiologist's 4-chambered heart. We're coming, Lisa. Hold on. The screen went dark, and Morrison turned to his crew. Thompson, get your Marines ready for boarding actions. Rodriguez, target their engines first, then weapons. I want those ships crippled, not destroyed. We're going aboard. Sir, Rodriguez said carefully. Standard protocol would be to call for reinforcements. 3 ships against 1 is... There's no time for protocol, Morrison interrupted. Those are our people dying over there. As the Defiant closed distance with the enemy ships, HFY watched something happen that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The human crew didn't just prepare for battle, they prepared for war. Marines checked their weapons with the calm efficiency of craftsmen inspecting their tools. Bridge officers coordinated targeting solutions with the cold precision of surgeons planning an operation. The first exchange of fire lasted only minutes. The Defiant was smaller than any of the Vorth destroyers, but it moved like a living thing. Rodriguez's tactical skills became apparent as she used the ship's superior maneuverability to stay in the blind spots of the larger vessels, while their weapons tore into Vorth engines and weapon systems. First destroyer is dead in space, Rodriguez reported. Second one is trying to ram us. Let them come, Morrison said. Thompson, are your people ready? Ready and willing, sir. Thompson's voice came through the communication system. We're going to make them pay for what they did. The way Thompson said those words made HFY's skin crawl. There was no anger in his voice, no rage or fury, just a calm statement of fact, as if he were describing the weather. The Defiant's boarding pods launched like bullets toward the damaged Vorth ships. HFY watched through the ship's sensors as human Marines cut through Vorth hull plating and disappeared into the enemy vessels. What happened next defied everything he thought he knew about combat. Standard galactic warfare doctrine called for boarders to secure key areas like the bridge and engine room, forcing surrender through control of critical systems. The humans ignored this entirely. They went hunting. Through the communication channels, HFY heard fragments of Marine chatter as they moved through the Vorth ships. Corridor clear, moving to Deck 3. Found more civilians. They're alive. Vorth squad retreating toward the engine room. Cut them off at Junction 7. But it was what he didn't hear that disturbed him most. There were no requests for surrender from the Vorth. No offers of quarter or prisoner exchange. The Marines were systematically hunting down every Vorth boarder with the patience of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, the Vorth are requesting permission to withdraw. Morrison's answer was immediate. Denied. Sir, standard protocol. They killed our civilians, Morrison said, his voice carrying no emotion at all. They don't get to withdraw. Over the next hour, HFY watched something that no Keltharian military academy had prepared him for. The human Marines didn't just defeat the Vorth boarders. They hunted them through the ship's corridors with methodical thoroughness. When Vorth soldiers tried to surrender, the Marines accepted it. But HFY noticed that very few Vorth seemed to survive long enough to surrender. Thompson to bridge, came the sergeant's voice. All 3 ships are secure. We're transferring survivors from the Haven. Casualties? Morrison asked. 17 wounded, none critical. The Vorth, well, there aren't many Vorth left to worry about. As rescue operations began, HFY found himself alone with Dr. Kate Sullivan, the Haven's chief medical officer. She was treating wounded civilians in the Defiant's medical bay, her hands steady despite the trauma she had endured. Doctor, HFY said carefully, I observed the Marine operations. They seemed very thorough. Sullivan looked up from bandaging a child's arm. The Vorth made a mistake, she said simply. They thought they could hurt our families and get away with it. But surely some form of negotiation. You don't negotiate with someone who murders children, Sullivan interrupted. You stop them. Permanently. The certainty in her voice was the same tone Morrison had used, the same calm acceptance Thompson had displayed. It was as if every human on the ship shared the same fundamental understanding about how the universe worked. As the Defiant began its journey back to human space with the survivors, HFY compiled his first real combat report. The humans had faced superior numbers and firepower, yet achieved total victory with minimal casualties. Their tactics had been unconventional, but devastatingly effective. But something else bothered him as he worked. The humans hadn't fought like soldiers following orders or even like warriors defending their territory. They had fought like something else entirely, something that made the aggressive Vorth retreat in fear. They had fought like a pack of predators protecting their young, and for the first time since boarding the human ship, HFY began to wonder if the Keltharian Empire had made a terrible mistake in making contact with these creatures. The human fleet that assembled 3 days later was unlike anything in Zexai's experience. 12 ships of various sizes hung in space around a mobile command station, their crews linked by constant communication chatter. Admiral Sam Carter had arrived with reinforcements, and the humans were planning something that made Zexai's blood run cold. They were going to hunt down the Vorth base that had sent the attackers. We tracked their jump signatures, Carter explained to the assembled captains during the briefing. The admiral was a tall human female with gray hair and scars on her hands that spoke of a lifetime in combat. The attack ships came from a staging base in the Kepler system. Intelligence suggests they're using it to coordinate raids throughout the sector, Zexai observed from a corner of the briefing room, his recording equipment capturing every word. The human officers displayed none of the ceremonial formality that marked Keltharian military gatherings. Instead, they spoke with the casual efficiency of people who had worked together for years. "What's the defensive situation?" asked Captain Morrison. "2 battlecruisers, 4 destroyers, and approximately 50 support craft," replied Major Tracy Bell, a compact human female with alert green eyes. "They've also got orbital defense platforms and ground-based weapons. In any normal military engagement, such defenses would require careful siege tactics or overwhelming force." Zexai expected the humans to call for additional ships or plan a lengthy campaign. Instead, Admiral Carter simply nodded. "When do we attack?" asked Lieutenant Colonel Mike Torres, a heavily built human male whose calm demeanor reminded Zexai uncomfortably of Sergeant Thompson. "Tomorrow morning," Carter said. "I want this finished quickly." The casual way she discussed attacking a fortified enemy base disturbed Zexai more than the decision itself. The humans weren't approaching this as a military operation requiring careful planning and preparation. They were talking about it like pest control. After the briefing, Zexai approached Admiral Carter with questions about human tactical doctrine. Her answers only deepened his growing unease. "Admiral, I do not understand your strategy," he said. "The Vorth base is heavily defended. Surely a siege or negotiated surrender would be more efficient." Carter looked at him with pale blue eyes that seemed to see through him. "The Vorth killed our civilians," she said. "That means they don't get to surrender." "But the casualties will be minimal," Carter interrupted. "Humans are very good at this kind of work." The attack began 18 hours later, and Zexai witnessed something that shattered his understanding of warfare forever. The human fleet didn't charge the Vorth defenses or attempt to overwhelm them with superior firepower. Instead, they moved like a living organism with 12 separate parts, each one responding to threats and opportunities with frightening coordination. Major Bell's special operations teams infiltrated the asteroid field around the base, planting explosives on hidden weapon platforms. Captain Morrison's ship led a diversionary attack that drew the Vorth battlecruisers away from their defensive positions. Meanwhile, Colonel Torres coordinated a 3-pronged assault that seemed to anticipate every Vorth response before it happened. "How are they coordinating so effectively?" Zexai asked Rodriguez as they watched the battle unfold from the Defiance Bridge. "Practice," she said, without taking her eyes off her tactical display. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how this works." But it was more than practice, Zexai realized. Every human ship moved with perfect timing, as if the fleet commanders could read each other's minds. When one ship took damage, others immediately moved to cover it. When the Vorth tried new tactics, the humans adapted instantly, turning enemy innovations against them. The Vorth defense platforms died first, their automated systems no match for human pilots who flew with suicidal precision. The battlecruisers lasted longer, but they were fighting a dozen enemies who seemed to know exactly where they would be and what they would do next. "Vorth flagship is requesting terms," the communication officer reported. "Denied," Admiral Carter said without hesitation. "Continue the attack." "Ma'am, they're offering to surrender." "They killed our people," Carter said, her voice carrying across the bridge like ice. "They don't get to surrender." Zexai watched in growing horror as the human fleet systematically destroyed every Vorth ship and defense platform. When the enemy tried to retreat, human ships were already positioned to cut off their escape routes. When the Vorth attempted last-ditch ramming attacks, human captains avoided them with ease while their weapons finished off the damaged vessels. The most disturbing part wasn't the destruction itself, but the calm efficiency with which the humans carried it out. There was no rage, no bloodlust, no emotional response at all. They simply worked their way through the Vorth defenses like technicians dismantling broken machinery. "Admiral," came Major Bell's voice over the communication system, "we've secured the base. Minimal resistance. Survivors?" Carter asked. "Approximately 200 Vorth personnel. They're requesting medical aid and prisoner status." Zexai held his breath, hoping the humans would show some mercy now that the battle was over. Carter's response crushed that hope. "Process them according to standard protocol," she said. "And Bell? Make sure they understand why this happened." As the fleet began cleanup operations, Zexai found himself alone with Colonel Torres in the ship's observation lounge. The human officer was calmly reviewing battle reports as if he had just completed a routine training exercise. "Colonel," Zexai said carefully, "I must ask about your tactics. The Vorth offered surrender multiple times, yet you continued attacking." Torres looked up from his reports with dark brown eyes that held no warmth. "The Vorth attacked a colony ship full of families," he said. "That changes things. Changes things how?" "It means we're not fighting soldiers anymore," Torres explained patiently. "We're hunting animals that threaten our pack." The casual way he said it made Zexai's skin crawl. "But surely there are rules of engagement, protocols for accepting surrender." "Rules are for fighting other civilized species," Torres said. "The Vorth gave up that protection when they started killing our children." Over the next several hours, Zexai compiled damage reports and casualty figures that defied belief. The human fleet had destroyed a heavily fortified enemy base without losing a single ship. Their casualties numbered in the dozens, while Vorth losses reached into the thousands. But the numbers weren't what disturbed him most. It was the realization that what he had witnessed wasn't really a battle at all. It had been an execution carried out by a species that had turned warfare into an art form. The humans hadn't just defeated the Vorth. They had made it clear that attacking human civilians was a death sentence. Not imprisonment, not negotiation, not even honorable defeat in battle. Death, delivered with the cold efficiency of natural predators eliminating a threat to their territory. As the fleet prepared to return to human space, Zexai found Captain Morrison on the bridge, reviewing sensor logs of the battle. "Captain," Zexai said, "I have observed many species in combat, but never anything like this. How do humans coordinate so effectively?" Morrison looked at him with those same cold eyes that every human seemed to develop during combat. "We're pack hunters," he said simply. "When something threatens the pack, we work together to eliminate it. But the level of coordination, the tactical adaptation, millions of years of evolution," Morrison interrupted. "Humans spent most of their history chasing prey across continents until it died of exhaustion. We learned to work together because that's how we survived." The casual way he described it made Zexai realize something that would change his entire report to the Keltharian High Command. The humans weren't just good at warfare, they were designed for it. Everything about their species, from their pack mentality to their persistence hunting instincts, had been refined by evolution into the perfect killing machine. And they had just demonstrated that they could apply those instincts to interstellar combat. As Zexai returned to his quarters to compile his observations, one thought dominated his mind. The Keltharian Empire had made contact with humanity, hoping to find useful allies or manageable threats. Instead, they had found the apex predators of the galaxy. 2 weeks deeper into Vorth territory, Zexai's scientific detachment finally crumbled completely. The human fleet had been pursuing retreating Vorth forces with the patient determination of a predator, following a blood trail, and what the xenobiologist was documenting challenged everything the Keltharian Empire believed about civilized species. The humans weren't just winning the war, they were rewriting it. Captain Ben Miller of the intelligence vessel UNS Tracker had joined the fleet with captured Vorth communication equipment. A thin human male with pale skin and nervous energy, Miller spent his days listening to enemy transmissions and translating them for the fleet commanders. What he shared with Zexai during their conversations made the alien's stomach turn. "The Vorth are calling us the death that follows," Miller explained as they sat in the ship's small mess hall. "Their military commands are telling their forces to avoid any system with human presence. Some of their commanders are requesting transfers to other fronts rather than face us again." Zexai stirred his nutrient paste thoughtfully. "This suggests they fear human tactics. But you are not significantly superior in technology or numbers." Miller laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They don't fear our tactics. They fear us. There's a difference." I do not understand the distinction. Tactics can be countered, adapted to, overcome, Miller said. But humans? We don't change our fundamental nature. We just find new ways to express it. This conversation led Zexai to seek out Dr. Alex Chen, the human xenobiologist who served as his counterpart aboard the fleet. Chen was a small human female with dark hair and sharp intelligence, and she had been studying Keltharian culture with the same intensity that Zexai studied humans. They met in Chen's laboratory, a cramped space filled with alien artifacts and research equipment. Chen was examining captured Vorth weapons when Zexai arrived with his questions. Dr. Chen, he began carefully, I am trying to understand human military psychology. Your species displays coordination and tactical adaptation that seems impossible for individual consciousness to achieve. Chen looked up from her work with interest. You're asking why we fight like a hive mind? Yes, precisely. How do separate human commanders coordinate so effectively without central control? Chen set down the Vorth weapon and leaned back in her chair. That's the wrong question, she said. You're assuming we're separate individuals who learn to work together. But that's not what humans are. Please explain. Humans are pack hunters, Chen said, using the same phrase Morrison had used weeks earlier. But not just any pack hunters. We're persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? Zexai shook his head. It means we evolved to chase prey for days or weeks until it collapsed from exhaustion. A human hunting party would follow an animal across hundreds of miles, taking turns running so some could rest while others continued the chase. Eventually, the prey would be too tired to run anymore and we would kill it. The clinical way she described it made Zexai uncomfortable. This was your primary hunting method? For millions of years, Chen confirmed. But here's the important part. Persistence hunting only works if the entire pack thinks and acts as one organism. Every hunter has to know what every other hunter is doing, where the prey is going, when to speed up, when to rest. Perfect coordination across vast distances and extended time periods. Zexai began to understand, and the realization terrified him. You are saying that human military coordination is not learned behavior, but evolutionary programming. Exactly, Chen said with obvious satisfaction. When humans go to war, we're not really fighting as individuals or even as military units. We're fighting as a species. Every human commander instinctively knows what every other human commander is thinking, because we've been doing this dance for millions of years. But modern warfare is different from primitive hunting. Is it? Chen interrupted. Watch what we do to the Vorth. We don't just attack them and withdraw. We follow them wherever they go, constantly applying pressure, never letting them rest or regroup. We chase them across star systems until they're too exhausted to fight back effectively. Then we finish them. The parallels were horrifying. Zexai thought about the fleet's current pursuit of Vorth forces. The way human ships appeared at every system the enemy tried to use for resupply or reinforcement. The Vorth weren't fighting a military campaign. They were being hunted to extinction by a species that had turned persistence hunting into an interstellar art form. Dr. Chen, Zexai said slowly, what you describe suggests that human civilization exists despite your predatory nature. No, Chen said firmly. Human civilization exists because of our predatory nature. Everything we've built, from family structures to international law, exists to channel and control what you might call the pack response. She stood and moved to a wall display showing human historical data. Look at our development pattern. We spent millions of years as hunters, then thousands of years applying the same psychological framework to warfare against our own species. Every human conflict has been practice for what we're doing now. Practice? Learning to hunt something to extinction with technology instead of just our feet and spears, Chen explained. The Vorth made the mistake of threatening our pack. Now they're discovering what happens when humans decide something needs to die. That evening, Zexai attended a tactical briefing where Admiral Carter discussed the next phase of operations. Vorth reinforcements had arrived in the system ahead of them, 3 full battle groups with heavy cruisers and carrier support. Any reasonable military force would consider retreat or call for additional support. The humans began adapting their tactics within hours. Staff Sergeant Maya Jackson, the fleet's communications specialist, had been analyzing Vorth command protocols and found a way to intercept their tactical communications. Colonel Torres had modified human fighters to carry Vorth identification signals, allowing them to penetrate enemy formations before attacking. Captain Morrison had developed a new formation pattern that would allow smaller human ships to coordinate attacks on larger Vorth vessels. How long did this adaptation take? HFY asked Rodriguez as they watched the tactical displays. About 6 hours, she said casually. Pretty standard for this kind of problem. Standard? You developed entirely new tactics in 6 hours? Rodriguez looked at him with surprise. Why would it take longer? The Vorth are using conventional formations and standard communication protocols. It's just a matter of finding the right approach. What she described as just a matter represented tactical innovation that would take Keltharian commanders months to develop and test. The humans had analyzed enemy capabilities, identified weaknesses, developed countermeasures, and implemented new tactics in less time than it took most species to file the proper paperwork. The battle that followed was even more disturbing than the attack on the Vorth base. The enemy reinforcements outnumbered the human fleet 3-1 and had superior firepower. Yet within 2 hours the Vorth were retreating again, their formations shattered and their command structure in chaos. HFY watched human fighters disguised as Vorth craft infiltrate enemy formations and attack from within. He saw human ships coordinate attacks with such precision that Vorth commanders couldn't respond fast enough to counter them. Most terrifying of all, he witnessed the moment when the Vorth fleet commander broadcast an unconditional surrender offer that Admiral Carter rejected without discussion. "Ma'am," the communication officer said hesitantly, "the Vorth are offering to withdraw from this entire sector in exchange for ceasefire terms." "Tell them no," Carter said without looking up from her tactical display. "They threatened our civilians. This ends when they're all dead or completely defeated." As the remnants of the Vorth fleet jumped away to hyperspace, Carter turned to her staff with the same calm expression she had worn throughout the battle. "Track their jump signatures," she ordered. "We follow them wherever they go. No rest, no resupply, no regrouping. Keep the pressure on until they break completely." Later that night, HFY sat in his quarters trying to compile a report that would make sense to the Keltharian High Command. How could he explain that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics, but their fundamental inability to give up once they decided something needed to die? How could he make his superiors understand that they had made contact with a species that viewed warfare not as politics by other means, but as an extension of the same persistence hunting that had made them the apex predators of their homeworld? And most terrifying of all, how could he explain that what he was witnessing was humanity showing restraint? 6 months later, HFY stood before the Keltharian High Command in the crystal spires of the capital city, holding a datapad that would reshape galactic politics forever. The war was over. The Vorth hegemony had surrendered unconditionally 3 weeks ago and begged the galactic community for protection from the humans. But the true horror wasn't the Vorth defeat. It was what HFY had learned about the species that defeated them. High Admiral Kethran Voss, Supreme Commander of Keltharian forces, reviewed the preliminary data with growing unease. His pale blue skin had darkened to an unhealthy gray as he read casualty reports and tactical analyses that defied everything the Empire understood about warfare. "Explain this," Voss said, gesturing to holographic displays showing the war's progression. The humans were outnumbered 4-1 when the conflict began. They had inferior technology and no significant military alliances, yet they achieved total victory in 6 months with minimal casualties. HFY activated his recording equipment, letting the High Command hear actual human voices from the battles he had witnessed. Captain Morrison discussing tactics with his crew, Admiral Carter rejecting Vorth surrender offers, Sergeant Thompson coordinating marine operations with casual efficiency. "The humans do not fight as we understand the concept," HFY began. "They do not wage war for territory, resources, or political advantage. They wage war for survival, not their individual survival, but the survival of their entire species." Dr. Yilna Tross, the Empire's chief xenopsychologist, leaned forward with interest. "Elaborate on this distinction." HFY touched his controls, displaying footage from the colony ship rescue that had started his education in human warfare. When the Vorth attacked civilian targets, they triggered what humans call the pack response. This is not a military doctrine or tactical decision. It is an evolutionary imperative encoded in their genetics. The High Command watched in silence as human Marines hunted Vorth borders through ship corridors with methodical precision. They saw Admiral Carter's fleet systematically destroying enemy forces that attempted to surrender. They witnessed the cold efficiency with which humans turned persistence hunting into interstellar warfare. This explains their tactical coordination, Tross said quietly. They are not separate military units working together. They are a single organism with multiple components. Correct, Zexai confirmed. Every human commander thinks like every other human commander, because they share millions of years of evolutionary programming. When they go to war, they become what their ancestors were, apex predators eliminating threats to their territory. High Admiral Voss studied the battle recordings with growing alarm. But their technology is not superior to ours. Their numbers are relatively small. How do they pose a threat to established galactic powers? Zexai activated another recording, this one showing human engineers modifying captured Vorth weapons overnight, improving their effectiveness beyond what their original designers had achieved. Because they adapt faster than any other species we have encountered. Humans spent millions of years chasing prey that constantly tried new escape strategies. They learned to innovate in real time or starve. The implications are disturbing, Tross said. If humans view any threat to their species as justification for total warfare, it is worse than that, Zexai interrupted. He displayed his final recording, Ambassador Claire Watson arriving at Keltharian space with her simple message about humanity wanting allies, not subjects. The humans are not aggressive conquerors. They are protective pack hunters. They want to be left alone with their families and their territory. Then what is the threat? Voss demanded. Zexai looked around the chamber at the most powerful military leaders in Keltharian space. The threat is that our definition of leaving them alone and their definition may not be the same. If humans decide that the Keltharian Empire poses a potential threat to their species, they will not negotiate with us. They will not try to contain us. They will hunt us to extinction with the same patience they showed the Vorth. The silence that followed stretched for several minutes. Finally, Voss spoke again. What evidence do you have for this assessment? During the final battle of the war, a Vorth fleet of 300 ships attempted a last-ditch attack on Earth itself, Zexai said. They were destroyed before reaching the outer system perimeter. But the important detail is not the battle itself. It is what happened afterward. He activated one final recording, showing Ambassador Watson speaking with human military leaders after the attack. Her words sent chills through the high command chamber. The Vorth tried to attack our homeworld, Watson said calmly. That means they have forfeited any right to exist as a species. We will hunt them wherever they go for as long as it takes until none remain. This was not metaphorical language, Zexai explained. Detailed analysis of human historical records shows this same pattern repeated throughout their development. Any threat to the human homeland triggers what they call extinction protocols, systematic elimination of the threatening species regardless of cost or time. Required. Dr. Tross was studying xenological data from Zexai's research. According to these genetic analyses, humans retain all the psychological markers of persistence predators. But they have enhanced them with technology and social organization. They are essentially prehistoric hunters with starships. That is precisely correct, Zexai said. And there is one more critical factor the High Command must understand, which is, everything I observed during the war represents humans showing restraint. The statement sent visible shock through the chamber. High Admiral Voss stood abruptly. Explain that statement immediately. Zexai displayed casualty figures from the war. Human forces deliberately minimized civilian casualties, even when it compromised tactical objectives. They followed rules of engagement that protected non-combatants. They attempted to limit collateral damage to Vorth infrastructure. According to their own historical records, this represents unprecedented restraint for a species they viewed as an existential threat. Why would they show restraint? Tross asked. Because they want to be seen as civilized by the galactic community, Zexai said. Humans understand that other species fear their capabilities. They actively try to appear reasonable and diplomatic. But if they ever decide that diplomacy has failed, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The implications were clear in the battle recordings and genetic analyses. Humans at full capacity without diplomatic restraints would be an extinction-level event for any species they decided to eliminate. Recommendations? Voss asked quietly. Zexai had spent months preparing for this question. The Keltharian Empire must immediately revise all policies regarding human contact. Under no circumstances should we take any action that humans might interpret as a threat to their species' survival. This includes military buildups near human space, research into anti-human weapons, or alliances with species that oppose humanity. That gives them veto power over our foreign policy, Voss protested. Yes, Zexhai said simply, because the alternative is being hunted to extinction by the most efficient predators the galaxy has ever produced. The High Command spent the next several hours reviewing Zexhai's complete files. They studied human tactical innovations, listened to intercepted communications, and analyzed the psychological profiles he had compiled. The conclusion was inevitable and terrifying. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were the ultimate expression of evolutionary survival, enhanced by technology and social organization. Every other species in the galaxy existed only because humans chose to let them exist. 3 days later, the Keltharian Empire issued new diplomatic protocols that would become the template for galactic policy toward humanity. Never threaten anything humans consider theirs. Never attack human civilians. Never attempt to restrict human expansion or movement. And most importantly, never give humans reason to believe that their species' survival is at stake. Because if that happened, every analysis suggested the same outcome. Humanity would patiently, methodically, and inevitably hunt the threatening species to extinction, no matter how long it took or how far they had to chase them. As Zexhai returned to his research duties, he carried one final thought that would haunt him forever. The most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence or their evolutionary advantages. It was their infinite patience when something threatened their pack, and in the vast galaxy full of potential threats, that patience was the only thing standing between civilization and a species of persistent predators who had learned to hunt between the stars.